Hi everyone, welcome to week 2 of BNI Education. Super excited to be back with you talking about this. And this week we're talking about leadership team roles, and it's a natural flow in from last week when your leadership team set out what it was trying to do for your group and how it could help. So leadership team roles, it's super important for the group to understand what each of you is supposed to be doing, and also why they should also think about being on the leadership team as well, which we don't delve in too much at this stage. We'll go back into that about week 20 when we're actually looking for our new leadership team. So to start off with, obviously we're going to do a little bit of a quick recap. So you'll see if you go to the slide, excuse me coming back on out. So the quick recap about is the first slide up. Second slide on the PowerPoint. And as we talked about last week, please feel free to modify these. In theory, you should leave the formatting of the slide because that's the official BNI logo, etc. But anyway, just as a bit of a laugh, first up is a pop quiz, just about what the leadership team's there for, and hopefully they all pick D, not B. So that's an opportunity just to get some engagement of the group and have a bit of humour, so get them up and running with the education. And this is quite a long education if you let it become long. So the option here is also to let each person introduce their own slide, because hopefully in the last week or so you've actually had a leadership team meeting and decided how these roles are going to actually happen and what people are going to do, so you can adapt these to what your team has agreed to do. And this is part of your team committing as to what they're going to do. So if I stand up in front of the room and say I'm going to be here at 6:40 as a visit host and I'm not there at 6:40, how's my visibility and credibility looking? Not very good. So slide 3 goes to the president. So, and it's a quick run through those 5 points. So provides leadership and vision. So that's actually helping the group understand what it's trying to do and where we're trying to go. Lead the meeting through the BNI agenda, and it's really super important they do stick to the agenda. Chairs the leadership team meeting, so the group needs to understand that the leadership team meeting, the leadership team group meets outside of the meeting. We're doing extra work, we're not just turning up here and standing up and saying we're doing things. We actually are leading the group by meeting as well. Also the president needs to make sure the leadership team does do what they say they're going to do. So he's actually, or she is, the manager of that as well. And then towards the end of the leadership team, although in some groups, like my groups, we choose this person way out. In fact, we know who the next president in October is that we are selecting right now. But they work with the director to choose the next best person to be president after the current president. So that's the president. And then moving into VP, obviously the key role is initially is just recording the palms, and hopefully in some groups or most groups you're not actually needing to record the paper referral slips, etc. Enter the slips if you're still on a manual system. Present a weekly vice president's report, which should be concise about one thing to help the group understand how it's going. Chairs the membership committee, so if there's an issue that requires the attention of the membership committee, they are the facilitator of that, and that's why the VP really needs to be someone that's been on a leadership team before. So they should be talking to the other visitor hosts if something comes up. Oversees the renewal process, and there should be a process around renewals. It should be actually announced at the meeting. It should be feedback out to the group, and it should be mentioned that renewal is a privilege and not a right. And then the application process. In an ideal world, we could spend a whole 3 or 4 minutes on what the VP does, because it is a very detailed, focused role, and the VP needs to be someone who's not prepared to make hard phone calls as well to someone that's, and that's part of the membership committee process. If someone's outside of the attendance guidelines or isn't stepping up to the mark with the other group expectation, the VP is normally the person that makes that phone calls. So that's the VP. And then moving into the education coordinator, that's you, so that's pretty simple. So we're asking you to prepare and present a nugget each week. Hopefully it's this nugget, and hopefully you're doing it with some real verve and excitement. But what we believe it should be, as we said last week, is helping the group get more. Organising the weekly speaker roster, and you should be ringing them each week and reminding them. It should be in the newsletter, it should be on your chapter sheet, it should be on Connect, and you should be telling them when you speak to them about bringing a door prize that isn't lunch or a bottle of wine. It should be something related to their business that adds value. And then you should also be introducing the weekly speaker. It's your job to stand up and not get in the way of the 10 minutes, but actually just say, this is XYZ from XYZ company, he's been in that business for this number of years, and ask a question that gives them a segue into their presentation, not their family history that they cover again in their 10 minutes. So you need to understand a little bit about what's in their 10 minutes. And there's notes at the bottom of all these slides to help you understand this. Visitor host, this is a vastly underrated role inside of BNI, and vastly, and as a general rule, not done that well. In fact, I had an email from a visitor today saying that she visited a group that luckily wasn't one of mine, and she hadn't been followed up at all after she went to the group, which is just a wasted opportunity for the group. Done all that work to get the visitor there, and then we haven't followed up with her to see if she has interest in applying. So that's a visitor host processed on that sheet. I'm not going to go through it right now, but that's something of an ideal process, and you need to know what your visitor hosts are going to do and how they're going to run that, and have that up on that slide. So as I said before, on that slide, in the second part of that slide, it says be at the meeting at such and such a time. Your visitor host should be committing to be there before the visitors, ready to receive them, whether or not you're expecting visitors. So you need to update that slide with that, and your visitor host, you need to know what time your visitor hosts have agreed to be there. Lastly, treasurer. This is again very badly done. The treasurer role quite often is badly done. So the treasurer's role is to, I'll just read this. The first thing is they need to prepare a budget for your group, so they need to know what the starting balance is in the chapter funds. They need to know how much is needed each week to run the chapter for visitors, venue fees, the charity donations, events. So the events coordinator needs to know how much the budget is for what they do. So they need to review how much you're collecting off the members to make sure it's sufficient to run the group. That's really, really important, and very few treasurers do that. They need to obviously meet with the existing treasurer and understand how much the balance is, how they get into the account, how the invoicing is done, etc. Very important. So point 2 is they need to make sure that everyone is paying the fees, so they can't just wait 6 months and then have someone owe a whole lot of money. That's their job. Then they need to report on each week how much is in the account, what we're using it for. So in other words, we've got $6,000 in our account. We are paying $600 a week for a venue. We're holding a visitor day in 4 weeks' time. We've put aside $1,000 we're going to give $1,000 to hospice at the end of the year, and I'm expecting that based on our current donation rate, we'll end up with about $5,000 to hand over to the next leadership team. That's a treasurer report, and it should be every week, not by once a month, because then it ends up getting forgotten for a long time. They've got to pay the bills, right? So that's another job they've got to do. So they've got to pay the venue, pay hospice, that sort of thing. And lastly, they need to let visitors know, or help visitors understand there's chapter fees, not just subs. Too often people join the group and they don't know about the chapter fees, and it's a nasty surprise that there's an additional cost. Then we move on to new member mentor. Hopefully your group's got one. We've introduced that into my groups about 18 months now, and we've been running new member mentors in all the groups for at least 12 months, and usually it's the ex-president. So their job is to help new members understand BNI basics and feel part of the group. They should one-on-one with a new member within a week of the induction, and there's a booklet called the BNI Passport of Success that we've written and produced, which your directors have, that they should use for that basis for the one-on-one. And it's not just handing that booklet over, it's actually running through that whole booklet and adding their stories about BNI into it. And we've found that doing that stops people joining and then 3 months later leaving without ever seeming to have understood about BNI, and it's a great way of keeping your ex-president involved in the group. Then zooming forward, We're then into a double slide, which is the social media coordinator. I'm not going to talk too much about that. It's a new role and it's up to your group what you do with it. But they should maintain and post to the group's social media page what they think is valuable to the group. Some groups have a public page, some just have a private page. Events coordinator, again, that's usually very badly done. They should announce every week the BNI educational events that are coming up. So the MSP on April 19th in Auckland, so they should be telling people that's on and to go to it. Leadership team training's coming on. Organise events that the leadership team has decided that they want to do, and report weekly what is planned and progress, and it's on tomorrow, and I've got 8 people, I only need 9, and etc, etc. And if you're working with a charity, they should do that liaison, although some groups will have a separate hospice champion. Then we're into the membership committee. So this is just to let the group know it's made up of the vice president and visitor hosts. They're responsible for the application renewal process, and they've got to make sure the BNI rules are understood and followed by members, and basically enforce those rules where necessary. But that's not necessarily an enforcement, it's helping people achieve or meet those expectations, and if they don't want to, it's to help them out of the group. So that's basically the whole education. Up to you whether you get the leadership team to stand up and talk about it, or whether you do the whole presentation. But it's a really good time right now for the group to understand what the new leadership team's roles are, and so they expect them to be carried out, and we add accountability back to our leadership team as part of that. So that's it. So hopefully that's helpful, and yeah, have a great week. Thank you.